My name is Lucy, and I always thought I knew what love felt like. I grew up surrounded by comfort and laughter, but little did I know that the world would teach me the harshest lessons of the heart. Life had seemed easy: family who adored me, friends who always supported me, and a sense of belonging that I cherished. Everything changed the moment I met him. He was charming, kind, and mysterious, a combination that made it impossible not to be drawn to him. I felt an instant connection, one that seemed to promise endless joy and warmth. I allowed myself to believe in the possibility of love for the first time without doubt or hesitation. We spent days talking, laughing, and sharing secrets. I told him everything I had never shared with anyone else: the deepest fears, the silliest dreams, the memories that made me who I am. I felt seen, truly seen, in a way that made my heart swell with hope. But life, as I would soon learn, does not always match our expectations. The first cracks appeared subtly. Little lies, delayed messages, the faint absence of attention where there once was devotion. My intuition whispered warnings, but my heart refused to listen. I wanted to believe, desperately, that he was different, that love would protect us from disappointment. Then came the night that would change everything. A single message, a single revelation, shattered my world. I discovered that he had been hiding truths, betraying my trust in ways I could never have imagined. My heart ached in ways that words cannot describe. The betrayal was not just about love, it was about everything I had opened myself to, everything I had hoped for, everything I had believed in. I cried for hours, my body shaking with a grief so deep it seemed it could swallow me whole. I questioned my judgment, my intuition, even my ability to trust anyone ever again. How could someone I loved so completely and trusted so entirely betray me so utterly? In the days that followed, I withdrew. I avoided friends, silenced my laughter, and let the pain of heartbreak engulf me. Every memory of him haunted me: the way he smiled, the way he held my hand, the words he whispered that now felt like lies. I felt as if the ground beneath me had disappeared, leaving me suspended in a void of despair and disbelief. Yet, even in this darkness, I began to notice small glimmers of strength. I realized that heartbreak, as painful as it is not the end. It is a test, a way for life to teach us about resilience, self-worth, and the power of inner healing. I began to write, pouring every tear, every ache, every thought into a journal that became both a refuge and a guide. Through the act of writing, I discovered a voice I had almost forgotten, a voice that reminded me of who I was before heartbreak, who I could be again, and who I would inevitably become stronger than ever. Each word, each line, was a step toward reclaiming my heart, my dignity, and my sense of self. I spent hours walking in the quiet streets of my city, listening to the wind, watching the sun set in hues of pink and gold, and allowing myself to feel everything without restraint. I realized that healing begins with acceptance, accepting the pain, accepting the loss, and accepting that love, no matter how beautiful, sometimes brings heartbreak. Friends reached out, some offering comfort, others offering platitudes that could not touch the depth of my grief. Slowly, I began to open my heart to their presence, learning that support comes in many forms, and that even when love fails, human connection can provide warmth and understanding. Months passed, and while the ache of betrayal never fully disappeared, it became bearable. I learned to navigate life with a wounded heart, discovering that strength is not the absence of pain, but the courage to continue moving forward despite it. I learned to find joy in small moments, laughter in the quiet, and hope in the promise of new beginnings. By the end of this chapter, I had taken the first steps toward recovery. I was not fully healed, but I was no longer completely shattered. I had discovered that even in the midst of heartbreak, the human heart has the remarkable capacity to endure, to heal, and to grow stronger than ever before. And as I closed my journal that night, I whispered to myself, "Lucy, you will love again, and this time, you will protect your heart while still allowing it to feel deeply." For the first time, those words felt like a promise, not just to the future, but to myself, the one who had survived heartbreak and was ready to reclaim her life. The weeks after the betrayal felt like an endless night. I am Lucy, and I had to learn the hardest lesson of my life, that loving someone blindly could hurt me in ways I never imagined. At first, every place, every song, every smell reminded me of him. I would see his smile in strangers, hear his laugh in echoes, and feel his absence in moments that were supposed to feel ordinary. The heartbreak was constant, pressing against my chest like a weight I could not lift. I withdrew from the world. I avoided gatherings, stopped answering calls, and let the world blur around me. Friends tried to reach me, but I could not yet trust their words or even myself. I was drowning in emotions I did not know how to process: anger, grief, betrayal, and an almost paralyzing sense of loss. Then, slowly, I began to write. I poured my soul into pages of my journal, confessing every thought, every tear, every scream that had no voice. Writing became my therapy, my confidant, my silent companion through nights I thought I could not survive. Each word carved a path through the darkness, a path back to myself. I also began to revisit my passions. Painting, music, photography, things I had once loved but had neglected, became anchors. Through creation, I felt something stir within me, a reminder that life still held beauty, even if my heart was bruised. Colors and melodies spoke the words I could not say, and slowly, I felt the first flickers of my inner strength returning. One afternoon, I took a long walk in the park. The sun filtered through the trees, and the gentle rustle of leaves felt comforting. I watched children play, their laughter free and innocent, and felt a pang of longing not for him, but for the ability to feel joy untainted by pain. I realized then that happiness is not dependent on anyone else. It is a choice, a skill, a conscious decision to embrace life despite sorrow. Therapy became a sanctuary. I began confronting my vulnerabilities, how I had placed my trust blindly, how I had ignored warning signs, and how I had tied my happiness to another person's actions. These sessions were painful but necessary. I learned that heartbreak is a teacher, albeit a harsh one, revealing not only the flaws in others, but also the lessons we must internalize to protect our hearts in the future. I began setting boundaries, not just with others, but with myself. I had to unlearn patterns of dependency, of giving more than I received, and of expecting validation from anyone but myself. This was uncomfortable at first, like stepping on unfamiliar terrain, but gradually it became liberating. I realized that my self-worth was not tied to anyone else, and that I deserved love that was mutual, respectful, and nurturing. The process of healing was nonlinear. Some days, I felt invincible, as if I had conquered the darkness. Other days, memories would return with full force, and I would weep, feeling as though I were back at the beginning. Yet, even in regression, I noticed growth, the awareness that tears are not weakness, but evidence of a heart that feels deeply and continues to survive. Slowly, life began to present small joys. A compliment from a friend, the perfect melody of a song, the scent of rain on pavement. Each moment reminded me that life still held beauty, even when the heart was wounded. These small moments were like stepping stones, guiding me out of despair towards self-discovery and resilience. I also explored solitude, not as loneliness, but as an opportunity for reflection and renewal. I learned to sit with my thoughts without judgment, to meditate on my emotions, and to appreciate the simple act of being alive. Solitude became empowering. It was not emptiness, but a space to cultivate self-love and inner strength. During this time, I met people who inspired me. Some were older, wiser, and shared their experiences of heartbreak and recovery. Others were peers, navigating their own struggles, who reminded me that human vulnerability is universal. Listening to their stories, I realized I was not alone, and that sharing grief can sometimes be the first step toward healing. By the end of this part of my journey, I had begun to stand on my own again. I was not yet fully healed, but I had regained pieces of myself that heartbreak had attempted to steal. I had discovered that even in the most painful moments, a resilient heart can learn to trust itself, to seek joy, and to embrace the possibility of love again, carefully, consciously, and with newfound wisdom. After months of sorrow and withdrawal, I realized that heartbreak, though devastating, also offers an unexpected gift, the chance to rediscover yourself. I am Lucy, and this chapter of my life was about learning how to stand tall again, to rebuild trust, not only in others, but in myself, and to embrace the girl I had always been beneath the layers of pain. The betrayal I experienced had left me cautious, almost afraid of human connection. I questioned every intention, analyzed every smile, and doubted my ability to trust anyone ever again. It felt as though my heart had become a fragile object, and even the gentlest touch could shatter it further. Yet, slowly, I began to understand that trust is not a gift you give lightly, but a seed you nurture carefully. I started small, allowing friends to support me without demanding perfection, sharing my feelings in measured doses, and observing their reactions. Some faltered, some thrived, but through each interaction, I learned valuable lessons about discernment, patience, and the human capacity for empathy. I also began to face the parts of myself I had neglected. For so long, I had tied my identity to love and relationships, believing that my value was dependent on someone else's approval. Heartbreak forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth: my worth is inherent, regardless of who loves me or betrays me. Through this realization, I returned to passions that I had abandoned. Writing became more than a release, it became a declaration. I wrote stories, letters I would never send, and reflections on my journey. Art, music, and photography allowed me to channel the depth of my emotions, to explore the full spectrum of grief and hope, and to reclaim my creativity as a form of self-expression. I also took time to explore my independence. Solo trips, quiet mornings, and solitary walks became moments of empowerment. Each step I took alone reinforced the truth that I could exist fully and beautifully without needing anyone to complete me. My heart had been broken, but my spirit was far from defeated. During this period, I met mentors and guides, people who had weathered their own storms and emerged stronger. Their stories illuminated paths I had not considered, reminding me that pain is not permanent and that resilience is built through intention, self-reflection, and courage. I also revisited my past relationships not to dwell, but to understand patterns. I examined how I had allowed myself to be vulnerable, where I had been too trusting, and what I could do differently in the future. This reflection was not about blame. It was about learning to navigate life with wisdom and self-respect. As I rebuilt my trust, I discovered the delicate balance between vulnerability and self-protection. I could open my heart without surrendering it entirely. I could love, hope, and connect while maintaining awareness and boundaries. This balance became the foundation for healthier relationships in every aspect of my life. Friendships deepened. I nurtured connections that were authentic and reciprocal, learning to value people who respected my journey and offered support without expectation. Through these bonds, I rediscovered the warmth and joy that had been missing during the months of heartbreak. I also began to embrace self-compassion. I stopped berating myself for mistakes, for trusting too much, or for feeling too deeply. I realized that feeling deeply is a strength, not a weakness, and that heartbreak is not a reflection of inadequacy, but a testament to courage. Slowly, the world began to look different. I noticed beauty in small moments, the sunlight streaming through leaves, the sound of rain against windows, the laughter of strangers. These details reminded me that life, even with its pain, holds richness and meaning. By the end of this chapter, I was no longer the girl paralyzed by heartbreak. I had begun to reclaim my voice, my confidence, and my sense of purpose. I was learning to navigate life with a wounded but resilient heart, aware of the lessons of betrayal, and prepared to embrace the possibilities of love and joy again. And as I closed my journal one night, watching the moon reflect on the quiet streets, I whispered, "Lucy, you are stronger than your heartbreak, and you are ready to live fully, love wisely, and trust your heart again." For the first time, these words felt like a promise I could keep, not only to others, but to myself, the one who had endured, learned, and begun to rise. The months of isolation and reflection had changed me in ways I could never have imagined. I am Lucy, and after enduring betrayal and heartbreak, I began noticing the first glimmers of hope. These were subtle, like sunlight filtering through storm clouds, but they were enough to remind me that life continues and that healing is possible. I started to allow myself to step outside again. Not immediately into the world of relationships, but into spaces where I could feel alive without fear. Cafes, parks, and quiet streets became my classrooms, where I observed life continuing around me and felt a connection to the energy of the world. The world no longer seemed threatening. It felt like a space of possibilities. Slowly, I began to laugh again, small bursts at first, but genuine. I remembered what joy felt like. It was fragile, like glass in my hands, but it was also mine. I learned that happiness is not the absence of pain, but the presence of choice. In these moments, I met people who had become subtle, yet profound influences in my life. A mentor in my art class, who encouraged me to channel emotions into creativity, a new friend whose laughter and warmth reminded me of the human capacity for kindness, strangers who smiled without expectation. Each interaction was a step toward reclaiming trust in the world, even if my heart remained cautious. The first spark of romantic hope appeared unexpectedly, not with grandeur or intensity, but quietly. Someone saw me, not as a wounded girl, but as a person with depth, resilience, and life yet to be lived. This presence was gentle, respectful, and careful, reminding me that love could exist without pain, that connection could be nurturing rather than destructive. But I moved slowly. I had learned to recognize the signs of unhealthy attachment, manipulation, and deceit. I observed, I listened, and I trusted only as much as my intuition allowed. This caution was not fear, it was wisdom forged in the fire of past heartbreak. I realized that love is not about abandoning caution, but about engaging fully while honoring one's boundaries. Healing also meant confronting the memories that still haunted me. I revisited old places, revisited old songs, and allowed myself to feel the ache of betrayal without letting it define me. I spoke aloud the truths I had hidden, the pain, the sorrow, and the lessons learned. Speaking these truths was empowering. It took away their control over me and returned it to my hands. Through reflection, I discovered a profound insight. Heartbreak is not punishment, but a teacher. It shows us what we value, what we can endure, and what we must protect. It reminds us that the capacity to feel deeply is a strength, and that resilience is not born from comfort, but from adversity. I also reconnected with my passions, taking them to new levels. Painting, writing, and music became not just outlets, but celebrations of survival. Each creation was a testament to the heart that had been broken yet continued to beat, the spirit that had been tested yet refused to surrender. Friends and family remained anchors. Their support was quiet yet steadfast. They reminded me that I was never truly alone, even in moments when loneliness seemed overwhelming. Through these bonds, I learned that vulnerability is shared courage, and that connection can be both safe and profound. By the end of this chapter, I realized that the world, though it had hurt me, was also capable of kindness, beauty, and hope. I had taken the first steps toward loving again, not blindly, but with awareness. I had begun to trust life, trust myself, and trust that my heart, though scarred, was capable of immense growth and joy. And as I stood one evening watching the horizon painted with the colors of the setting sun, I whispered, "Lucy, this is your life. It is fragile, it is beautiful, and it is yours to live fully." For the first time in months, those words felt not like wishful thinking, but like truth. My heart, broken though it had been, was beginning to believe in love, hope, and the possibility of new beginnings once more. The journey of healing is rarely linear. I am Lucy, and by the time I reached this point, I had come to understand that solitude is not emptiness, but a place of profound discovery. The heartbreak had stripped me bare, but in that vulnerability, I found the raw materials to rebuild myself stronger than before. For months, I immersed myself in introspection. Every morning, I would sit by my window and watch the city wake up, feeling the hum of life around me. Birds chirping, children laughing, strangers rushing past. It was a world moving forward, indifferent to my suffering, yet deeply reminding me that life continues, whether we are ready or not. I embraced the silence, allowing it to speak to me. In those quiet moments, I confronted my fears, fear of being hurt again, fear of trusting, fear of letting my heart open. I realized that these fears were valid, but they could not define me. I learned to honor them while choosing courage over avoidance. Creativity became my sanctuary. I painted emotions I could not articulate, wrote letters to myself that chronicled my pain and growth, and composed melodies that carried both sorrow and hope. Each act of creation was a step toward reclaiming my identity, my true self that had been hidden beneath layers of grief and disillusionment. Through this process, I discovered the power of boundaries. I no longer allowed anyone to overstep my emotional space. I learned to say no, to protect my energy, and to prioritize my healing over the comfort of others. These were difficult lessons, but they were necessary for reclaiming my autonomy and self-respect. I also began reconnecting with people who had proven their loyalty. Old friends, family members, and mentors became my anchors. Their presence was not overwhelming, it was stabilizing. They reminded me that trust, while fragile, can be rebuilt slowly and carefully. Through these relationships, I learned that love and support are not limited to romantic connections. They exist in many forms if we are willing to recognize them. During long walks alone, I reflected on my past mistakes and triumphs. I realized that heartbreak had taught me invaluable lessons about human nature, my own resilience, and the meaning of self-love. I acknowledged my pain without letting it define me, and I forgave myself for trusting too deeply, for caring too much, and for opening my heart despite knowing the risks. As weeks turned into months, I began to notice subtle shifts. Laughter returned more freely, curiosity reawakened, and joy began to infiltrate even ordinary moments. I understood that healing is not about forgetting or erasing the past. It is about integrating experiences, learning from them, and moving forward with intention. New opportunities emerged. I enrolled in classes I had always wanted to explore, traveled to places that inspired me, and engaged in activities that challenged me. Each new experience reinforced the lesson that life is vast, full of possibilities, and that heartbreak, while painful, does not limit our capacity to grow, explore, and thrive. Through solitude, I discovered an inner strength I had never known. My heart, once fragile and raw, had become resilient. I could feel deeply, care intensely, and yet maintain balance and boundaries. This strength was not born of arrogance, but of survival, reflection, and courage. I also allowed myself to dream again. Not dreams of love dependent on another person, but dreams of accomplishment, freedom, and fulfillment. I envisioned a future where my happiness was not contingent on anyone else's actions, but on my choices, passions, and purpose. By the end of this chapter, I had transformed. I was still Lucy, the girl who had loved deeply and been betrayed, but I was stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. I had learned that heartbreak does not define the heart, it refines it. I had discovered that solitude is not loneliness, but empowerment. And I had found that even when life shatters you, it also provides the tools to rebuild with beauty, depth, and resilience. And as I closed my journal one night, looking at the stars scattered across the sky, I whispered, "Lucy, your heart is unbroken in its essence. It has been tested, but it endures. It will love again, not blindly, but fully, consciously, and beautifully." By now, I had traveled a long, winding road. I am Lucy, and the girl who once trembled under the weight of betrayal had grown into someone who could face life with courage, clarity, and an open heart. Heartbreak had left its mark, but it no longer controlled me. It had taught me, shaped me, and ultimately freed me. I learned that healing is not a moment, but a journey. Each day presented a choice, to dwell in sorrow or to seek growth, to close my heart or to open it to the possibility of life and love once more. I chose growth every day in small acts of courage, reflection, and self-care. Through friendships, creativity, and moments of quiet reflection, I discovered an unexpected truth. Joy is not the absence of pain, but the willingness to embrace life fully despite it. I laughed more freely, I explored more fearlessly, and I allowed my heart to feel deeply without fear. Love returned, slowly and gently, not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of connection and understanding. I met people who respected my boundaries, cherished my vulnerabilities, and nurtured my growth. Through these connections, I realized that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt, but only when we are ready to honor ourselves and our own emotional limits. I also redefined success and fulfillment. No longer tied to external validation or the approval of others, I pursued goals that resonated with my soul. I invested in my passions, embraced new experiences, and celebrated achievements both large and small. Each accomplishment reminded me of my resilience, my strength, and my capacity to create a life that is meaningful and joyful. Heartbreak had taught me empathy. I understood that others, too, carry invisible wounds. This awareness deepened my connections, allowing me to love and support not only romantically, but as a friend, a family member, and a fellow human being navigating life's challenges. I also learned to celebrate solitude. It was no longer a lonely void, but a space of empowerment, reflection, and self-discovery. I cherished the moments I spent alone, knowing that my happiness did not depend on anyone else. It was rooted in my own heart, mind, and spirit. As I walked through quiet streets one evening, the world bathed in the golden light of sunset, I felt a sense of profound gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that had taught me strength, for the love that had opened my heart, and for the lessons that had transformed me into someone wiser, braver, and more compassionate. By the end of this chapter, I had fully embraced the truth. Heartbreak is not the end of the story, but a turning point. It is a catalyst for self-discovery, growth, and the emergence of a heart capable of love, joy, and resilience beyond measure. And as I closed my journal that night, I whispered softly, "Lucy, you have endured, you have grown, and you are ready to live fully. Your heart, though scarred, is beautiful, brave, and unbreakable." From that moment, I knew that life, with all its unpredictability, pain, and beauty, was mine to embrace. My heart had been broken, but in that breaking, it had been reborn, stronger, wiser, and infinitely capable of love. The journey I had traveled was long, winding, and at times unbearably painful. I am Lucy, and this chapter is about closure, the moment where heartbreak transforms into wisdom, where sorrow evolves into strength, and where the shattered pieces of a heart finally come together to form something resilient and beautiful. The last year had been a whirlwind of emotion. I had cried rivers, laughed cautiously, and explored the depths of my own soul. Heartbreak had left scars, but it had also left a treasure, the understanding of my own strength, the clarity of my values, and the courage to embrace life fully. I had learned that love is not only about romance. It exists in friendships, in family, in creativity, and in the quiet connection we cultivate with ourselves. I celebrated those connections, knowing that each one strengthened the foundation of my heart, making it capable of enduring both joy and pain. One quiet morning, I stood by the lake near my childhood home, watching the water ripple in response to the gentle wind. Reflection had become my daily ritual, and in those moments I saw myself, not the broken girl, not the betrayed girl, but the woman I had become. She was resilient, compassionate, and unapologetically human. I thought about him, the one who had shattered my trust, and instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, for the depth of feeling, and for the opportunity to rebuild myself stronger. I understood that every heartbreak carries a purpose: to teach, to awaken, and to prepare us for life's next chapter. As I walked through the familiar streets, I realized how far I had come. The pain that had once consumed me was now a distant echo. I could recall it, reflect on it, and feel it without being controlled by it. The memories no longer imprisoned me, they had shaped me. I also began to envision the future, not as a fragile dream, but as a tangible reality shaped by my choices, my resilience, and my courage. I pursued new passions, explored unknown paths, and embraced challenges that once would have terrified me. Each step forward was a testament to the strength that heartbreak had forged within me. Love approached me again, subtly and patiently. This time I was ready, not desperate, not naive, not fearful. I could open my heart fully yet wisely. I could trust yet maintain boundaries. I could give love freely, knowing that it would be reciprocated with care and respect. Friends and family remained the pillars of my life, providing laughter, guidance, and unwavering support. I cherish these connections more deeply than ever, understanding that love is multidimensional and that emotional fulfillment is not limited to romance. Through writing, I continued to process, reflect, and celebrate my journey. Every journal entry, every poem, every note of music was a step toward healing, self-expression, and empowerment. Creativity became my companion, my healer, and my reminder that life, even after heartbreak, holds infinite beauty. And finally, I embrace the truth that heartbreak is not a failure, but a transformation. It strips us bare so we can rebuild with intention. It challenges us so we can grow stronger. And it teaches us that the heart, though fragile, is infinitely resilient. Standing on the balcony one evening, the sky ablaze with sunset hues, I whispered to myself, "Lucy, you have endured, you have grown, and you are ready to live fully. Your heart has been broken, but it is now stronger, wiser, and capable of love deeper than you ever imagined." At that moment, I felt a peace I had not known in years. The heartbreak that once defined me no longer had power over me. I was free to laugh, to dream, to love, and to live without fear. My heart had been reborn, not untouched, but perfected in its strength, grace, and capacity to feel. Life, I realized, is a tapestry woven from joy and sorrow, love and loss, laughter and tears. Each thread is essential, and even heartbreak has its place, teaching lessons no other experience can. I had learned to cherish every moment, to embrace vulnerability, and to honor my journey. And so, as night fell and stars lit the sky, I smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in a long time. Not because life was perfect, but because I had survived, grown, and discovered the depth of my own resilience. My heart had been broken, but now it was whole again, ready for all that life had to offer. I am Lucy, and my story is one of heartbreak, healing, and the unbreakable strength of the human heart.